G'day guys and gal. You know, when the tower first dropped, they were arguably the only ethically good faction in 40k. They were diplomatic, not racist, merciful, and quite environmentally friendly. I actually didn't mind a naive, non-grimdark faction trying to survive in a horrible galaxy. But I guess I was a minority, as after some fan pressure, GW changed the tower to be a bunch of mind-controlled pretentious wankers who kill puppies and shit. In recent lore, there are a bunch of rapidly growing super racist Tau who are hell-bent on genociding humans after a little incident they had in the warp as well. So yeah, not the cute little non-grimdark kiddos that we once had. However, life is a cycle, and a new Tau faction has emerged. One without the mind control, human genocide, or puppy killing. The only morally good faction in 40k, the Farsight Enclaves. Plus they engage in melee combat, which is a big up from me. Today we'll go over who the Farsight Enclaves are and how they came to be. We'll then highlight the differences between them and the normal asshole Tau. Let's get into it. The Tau are the new kids on the block. There are dreadnoughts stomping around that are older than their entire race. Now I'm not going to dive into their backstory, there's a video for that, but basically their technological evolution was extremely fast and dramatic. In terms of raw tech, they have easily surpassed mankind and could give the Eldar a run for their money. A huge driving force for this power leveling was the random appearance of overpowered Tau called the Ethereals. The Ethereals were very charismatic and immortal Tau, who basically became the rulers of the race and united them under a common cause. Now, despite being a bunch of Pindic blue boys, the Tau have mechas, and from those mechas emerged heroes. The greatest among them was Commander Farsight, whose real name is super weeby and doesn't matter, so we'll just continue to use Farsight. After the Damocles Crusade, where the Imperium and Tau went toe-to-toe for a bit, before the Imperium withdrew because it had way bigger issues to deal with than the Tau, there was a lot of devastation and planets for the Tau to reclaim. Farsight took charge of this reclamation process, as he had already proven himself to be a legendary commander and a great orc killer. Considering there was now a shitload of orcs running around, this was quite handy. After retaking most of the human worlds that were originally lost, the Orc menace was too spicy for Farsight to ignore, hence he diverted his troops and armies against the Orcs and waged a vicious war against them. Now, the Tau are quite conservative. They aren't big on invasions and blowing up planets and other Imperium tier shit like that. They like taking one planet at a time, as clean as possible. Farsight, however, was not naive. He knew that to beat the Orcs, not only did you have to drive them off, but then you had to wipe them out. If word gets back to Orc territory that there is a good scrap to be had, they will come in large numbers, but if they're genocided, then they won't really bother with it. Hence Farsight led his expedition deep into Orc territory and sodomized those green fuckers in very unorthodox ways. The Ethereals started getting concerned. Farsight was a hero, but he was getting a bit too brash and independent for their liking. They wanted a delicious vanilla, not a chocolate variant. That's not a race reference, by the way, all the Tau are equally blue. Hence the Ethereals stopped sending Farsight reinforcements in the hope that his conquest would burn out. Now, nothing quite squashes a Tau's naivety like the horrors of war. Hence, after a demonic ambush which left all the Ethereals accompanying Farsight's army dead, and also resulted in Commander Farsight getting a gnarly new sword, old mate started to have a think about things. Well, we all know self-reflection is heresy, and there was only one way this could go. See, when an Ethereal dies, the army who he was looking after is supposed to phone home and pick up some more Ethereals. The Tau are taught that the Ethereals are carrying the team, and without them, they would be a bunch of lost little lamb. However, Farsight noticed that these people were fine without those lanky twats floating around. His Tau set up fortified colonies on the worlds they retook with the same, if not better efficiency than they would have done with an Ethereal around. On top of that, whilst the Ethereals dismissed demons as just another dangerous Xeno race, Farsight got the feeling that that wasn't the case, and that the demons in the warp were a way bigger thing than they thought it was. Farsight was also really enjoying melee combat with his new very heretical sword, despite the fact that melee combat was a big no-no for the Tau for obvious reasons. On top of this, Farsight already had his own issues with the Ethereals. They forced him to basically murder his old mentor, Commander Puretide, so they could store his tactical genius on a chip, and his mentor's last words were, "Don't trust the Ethereals." When a Tau is around Ethereals, all heretical thoughts are suppressed, but with them gone, the heresy could commence. Farsight was also growing more and more pissed off that there were no more Tau reinforcements, so instead of going back home like a good little commander, he was like, fuck it, and he took over a bunch of planets in a forbidden zone and fortified the ever-living shit out of them. He also stopped taking calls from the Tau Empire, leading them to believe he and his army had died in battle. He was celebrated as a hero and a martyr, until the Ethereals discovered that he had set up his own little Tau Empire called the Farsight Enclaves. After that, they got salty, and they branded him as a traitor and a coward. See, what makes the Tau grimdark is the fact that they're being manipulated and brainwashed by the Ethereals, but the Farsight Enclaves have no Ethereals, so they're literally the only faction in Warhammer that isn't bad or grimdark. Even Farsight, who rebelled against the Tau, decided that he was too dangerous and was not worthy of the power of the billions of Tau in his new empire, hence he entered self-exile. The reason why the Ethereals hated the Farsight Enclaves so much, despite the Enclaves never threatening them and even on occasion coming to their aid, was that it showed that the Tau could have a flourishing society without the Ethereals. The Ethereals were proven to be redundant, and just like every nation whose oppressive leaders had become more of a liability than an asset, that meant opportunity for uprisings or just, democracy. Even without Farsight leading them, the Enclaves did a great job. Now, Tau only lived for a couple years. Around 60 years is pretty old for a Tau, hence Games Workshop had to figure out how to keep Tau characters in the setting, as each book jumps back and forth 100 years or more. For Commander Shadowsun, they just freeze that bitch till she's needed, but for Farsight, it turns out his sword sucks the life energy from anything it kills and gives it to him, hence Old Mate is over 300 years old in the current setting. Nothing good lasts forever though, hence a bunch of Tyranids came to eat some Tau sashimi. Without the Ethereals trying to keep everything by the book, the Enclaves were able to adapt and use their newfound freedom to their advantage. They launched brutal and unpredictable strikes on the Tyranid High Fleet, and they were able to wipe out 3/4 of it before it reached their worlds. The first world it attacked was actually the one Farsight was exiling on. When his hut started to smell like shit and the grass started getting a bit too biomassy, Farsight rushed back to the Tau City and was like, "It's a me, Farsight, give me my fucking mech and let's get this bread." Hence, despite the Tau's surprise at seeing their legendary hero somehow alive 300 years later, they complied and he took command. Now, despite his ability and genius, there were too many Tyranids. Billions of Nids died in the invasion, but it wasn't enough, and the planet looked doomed. Hence, the Tau scientists came up with a brilliant idea that, if explored more, could genuinely defeat the Tyranids for good. They were to make a neurotoxin, but needed time to do it, hence Farsight and a handful of mechas defended the scientists from every Tyranid under the sun. Eventually, they were overrun, and only Farsight and one of the scientists escaped. As they flew away from their doomed world, Farsight noticed something. The Tyranids had food poisoning. Their ship's blackened and begun to disintegrate, and within an hour, the entire High Fleet was dead. The Tau scientists had finished creating their toxin and injected it into themselves and allowed the Tyranids to eat them, hence when they got digested, the toxin rapidly self-replicated and infected the entire fleet. Fuck yeah. In that moment, Farsight truly understood the meaning of the greater good. Selfless actions for the good of others. Farsight also made another observation. Despite his exile and lack of Ethereals, the Enclaves had continued to flourish for 300 years no worries. It basically confirmed that his hypothesis was correct, and that Ethereals were just a bunch of creepy-ass priests that gave orphan boys PTSD. After the Nids are dealt with, the Farsight Enclaves recolonized the planet, naming its cities in honor of the scientists who gave their lives to destroy the Nids. Farsight retakes his role as the leader of the Enclaves and puts the boys back on the map. Now, it's important to note that the Farsight Enclaves didn't declare rebellion or anything against the rest of the Tau. They just couldn't be fucked going home to pick up more Ethereals, which the Ethereals took really personally. Their society is very similar to the rest of the Tau, in that they still have their caste system. They still believe in the greater good, and they still use similar weapons and technology. It's not unheard of for them to return to the Tau Empire in the Tau's time of need to help protect them, and Farsight has worked with Shadowsun a number of times since he was declared a traitor. So what are the differences? Despite no Ethereals breathing down your neck. Well, firstly, the Enclaves were founded by Farsight's fuck-off huge army, not by civilian colonists. Hence, the Enclaves are super fortified and very warlike, with a shitload of battlesuits. They also use fusion blades, which are kinda like lightsabers, which is a big up for me. Farsight also has his 8, which are 8 of the best and brightest in the Enclaves that act as his personal posse of gutter stompers. In terms of combat doctrine, how do these guys differ? Well, the Enclaves are more into the deep strike, pew, 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 step, haha, take that you shit. Whilst the wider Tau are like,
Deploy the long-range pew-pew.
And they kind of creep up on the battlefield instead of Allah Akbaring straight into the backline. This is reflected on the tabletop as well. You know, if the Enclaves and the Tau were to form an alliance, they would be pretty unstoppable, as both of their techniques would complement each other dramatically. In terms of handling Xenos or humans or whatever, the Farsight Enclaves are super welcoming. They have a human-designated world in their territory, and their troops frequently act as mercenaries for other Xeno races. Farsight actually has mates within the Inquisition who send him butthole pics, and occasionally advise him about his super heretical sword. Now the Tau Empire equally is receptive of human friends, or at least they used to be. As I mentioned earlier, due to a bit of a failed warp jump incident, a large number of Tau now fucking hate humans for perverting the greater good into some kind of Hindu god in the warp, so it'll be interesting to see if the Tau Empire become jaded and racist like everyone else in the setting. The Farsight Enclaves are cool, like the Tau 2.0 with lightsabers and no creepy controlling uncles. And that does this for today, guys, the lore and story of the Farsight Enclaves. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more vaginal content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.